Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frollo podcast. Today I am delighted to be joined by Annalie Howling. Annalie has 20 years experience as an elite performance coach and trauma specialist. And Annalie's mission is to help people liberate themselves from limiting beliefs to unlock their full potential. And you are now also an author as well, Annalie, and your book, Unapologetic, Unshackle Your Shame, Reclaim Your Power, I know is coming out on the 13th of May, which is super exciting.
It is. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And very excited to step into the role of being an author.
Yes, well, there's a lot to chat through. So I would love to start off where I usually start off, which is to learn how it is that you came to do this work that you're doing, because I'm assuming that there's something that's brought you on this journey, and I'm really curious to know where it all started.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on today. Honestly, we're having a little bit of we just chatted off air, and we're having a little bit of a kind of full circle, a bit of a serendipity moment, I think, at the minute, because I'm feeling quite burnt out. As I mentioned to you off air, the book's coming out, and I have written it, and I am now an author, about to be a published author, and I'm sort of transitioning, that means, into this role along with my day job, single mummying, all the other roles that we perform day to day. And so this is my full circle as to how I got here. Was I had a very big job in corporate, I had an MBA, I was doing all this stuff. I had, the Range Rover on the drive, in the house with the perfect postcode in London, and all this stuff. And I was working so hard. I now realize that was to try and outrun, at the time, childhood trauma that I'd experienced, and to make myself financially secure. That was the driving force underneath it all, because I needed financial security to not have to go back to the environment that was so torturous for me. But I didn't realize that at the time. At the time, it was full, all steam ahead, type A, achievement, accolade, go, 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 ignore all the warning signs. I mean, don't even look at warning signs, do something else, band-aid something else to get through it, to keep going. And then eventually, at 29, I had my ass served back to me in a catastrophic burnout that you simply cannot ignore, anyone that's had burnout. And it forced me to start unraveling really a lot of my own behaviors, beliefs, conditioning. And I'll be honest, for years, you start on this journey, you start pulling the thread, and things started to help and things started to get better. And I often say, I was wishing that it would be something as, I say simple, but I was hoping someone would say, oh, you're intolerant to gluten. Just cut out that food group and you can carry on and exactly as you are and you'll be fine. And of course, I wasn't intolerant to gluten. I was intolerant to my life. And that's a very hard truth that I didn't really want to face. So you start with all of these things just slowly and simply, finding my way back to myself. And then more latterly, so the last 5 years or so, the biggest piece of my work since leaving corporate, training as a coach, going and living in kind of coaching school, the headquarters of it, and then being able to help a lot of people through trauma-informed therapy that I've also trained in. I'm an EMDR practitioner, kind of when it heals yourself, or it healed me on that path too. And then finding my way onto social media to help people during the lockdowns, trying to give away free advice that I would give to my elite performance clients, trying to help them. And then was offered the book deal. So sort of that's, I guess, how it's come about. And I'm feeling the very familiar symptoms of burnout right now. But the big difference is that this is absolutely my purpose. And I know myself well enough and what I need. And I have a very clear finish line in for after the book is out.
So what are those symptoms of burnout that you're experiencing right now? What do they, how does it appear?
The easiest one for me to tell you is I'm on the brink of tears all the time, all the time. and I'm not a big crier. Like, not as in
Mm.
it's just not usually my sort of response. But at any moment, I just feel like crying, like all the time. I'm so, and it's, it's never the big things. Like, you could phone me and say that I need to undertake this huge thing, and I'd be able to do that. But say I dropped something on the floor, in the kitchen that I was trying to make dinner, that would be me done. I'd be absolutely over the edge done, or I mean, this week that we're speaking is early March. It's World Book Day this week. I've got to get a costume for my daughter. Like, if I forget something for her, I would be devastated, and it's that kind of thing where I'm just trying to juggle so many different pieces. I've got brain fog, so where usually I'd get things quicker and I'd have the answers faster, and I can feel that I'm not as, things aren't firing in the same way. I love doing sort of Pilates and getting outside for walking. I have no motivation whatsoever to move my body. So, because I think most of my energy is being used up trying to keep me going at the moment. And the phrase that I coined the last time I'd been through this and I realized what it was and I was able to reflect back is that I'm existing right now. I'm not living.
Yeah. Well, I fully relate because I went through my own experience of burnout actually sort of last year. And it was similar to that. I think I was just, being a single parent, running a startup, and which is very much my passion, but also was undiagnosed ADHD until actually a couple of months ago. So didn't realize that I was in like proper hyper focus for a lot of the time, and just going at a level and at a rate that wasn't sustainable at all. And some people close to me in my life sort of warned me and said, this is, you can't keep running at this pace. It's going to catch up with you. And then it was bizarre, just this feeling of feeling floored, and also just not being able to, there were days where I could barely even look at my emails, could barely, just the thought of looking, it's so odd how it happens. But yeah, very, very naively thought, no, it won't happen. It won't happen to me. And it's a really weird thing. It's a really, really weird thing. So how in kind of, experiencing the symptoms now, is there anything that you can do given how much you've got going on with the, book promo and launch? What are the kind of small things that you'll do to try and mind yourself and reset?
So there's kind of three things, and I'd offer this out. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I know other people listening will as well. Like, I think it's easy to maybe look at anyone that's on social media or doing something and be like, oh, you've got it all together. And, it's not necessarily the case. It doesn't mean I'm unhappy. I'm not unhappy. Yeah. I'm really happy. But it doesn't mean that, everything is perfect. So thank you for naming that. I think just you and I being really honest is helpful.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's really, I would say a lot of people would look at you and your social media and think, wow, she's gorgeous, she's intelligent, she's got an amazing business, she got a book coming out. So I think it's really important to be real and vulnerable. And the reality is that I heard someone saying, challenging the quote, women can have it all recently, because sometimes things really do come at a price. So we do need to be careful, especially as single parents who are trying to keep it all going. So yeah, but you were just about to say your three things that you focus on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to do sort of, three things. The first thing I am going to do is say no a lot. So I had an example of that this week, and people, it's boundaries effectively, and people are really afraid of saying no, especially because we're nice people. You don't want to let someone down. I'm a giver naturally, I like helping people. I'm a Cancerian, I'm a nurturer, I'm all of these things, and I'm a trauma therapist. So when people are suffering in particular, I want to dive in and help. So I have to stop myself from doing that because I've only got so much in the tank, and that has to be for me and my daughter. People really close to me. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine reached out this week and was like, oh, I've just met this person. I'd really like to introduce you to them. When can we go for lunch? And I said, honestly, and I know how this is going to sound, not until after June. Because there is not one social event in my diary, as in like with friends, just a social event between now and after the book comes out. And that has to be as it is. Like, I'm going all in on this. This is, a lot of financial resource or any of my time resource. So there is no capacity right now for socializing. And also, if I did turn up, I would be an absolute shadow of myself. No one's getting me there. I wouldn't really want me there. I'm going to be doing it because I'm doing it for someone else, not for me. So the first thing is saying no. The second thing is asking for help. So one thing I didn't used to do at all as a type A, as someone that used to achieve, and I think this is also tied into like a lot of my work that I've done around shame, is asking for help. And I have absolutely no shame in telling you or your audience, because of course, if you're a single parent, it's so hard financially at the moment. It's really difficult to do the Easter holidays and this and that and the other, as well as writing a book, as well as, paying people to help you with marketing and other things you might be doing, traveling, the costs of that and everything else. And I'm so happy with my life, but sometimes I need to ask people for some help, and that might be, I gave some financial examples there, but it might be me just saying, look, honestly, I can't afford to do that right now. I'd love to see you, but can we go for a walk instead? Or can we go and share a workout class, because I was going to go and do that anyway. We can do that instead, or have a phone call at home, like a kind of online Zoom catch up instead, or something like that with whoever I might be as well. And there is absolutely no shame in that. And I really want sort of people to know that. And the asking for help piece as well. Like, could you please help me with my daughter one evening? I've got a press event next week, which I'm really excited about. I have to get my daughter early from school. So I sent in the thing, and you have to do the reason on the register. I was joking with a friend yesterday. I was going to put, is it reasonable for me to write because I've run out of fucks, as the reason I'm taking her out early?
I love it.
I have no more fucks left. So that reason, mother has run out of fucks. So but I've got to get her out early to get her to my boyfriend's house, where he's very kindly going to look after her, so I can go into London, so she can. Do you see what it is? So so you just have to be like, do you know what? Like, I can't be perfect. I can't make this all work. I've got to ask for help. And then the other thing I'm going to do to make sure that I don't sort of go too far into it is to have regular finish lines wherever I can. Now, like I said, the book's up 13th of May. There's press afterwards and a few things afterwards. And then in UK, it's half-term holiday. I am taking that girl away with me, again, a bit early. That is literally the last of Mother's Fucks that day, on that Friday, to get on a plane, to go to Portugal for a week with some really, really good friends of mine. And that is where ideally and sincerely hope someone hands me a rosé, and maybe they just don't stop for a couple of days. So that's it.
Amazing. Well, yes, I am rooting for you to get to that finish line and be handed a large glass of ice cold rosé, which you definitely deserve. And so, more about the book. So what exactly is the book about? What can people expect if people are interested in pre-ordering the book? What is it about? The following is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. I want to talk about mental health for a minute. Being a single parent comes with its highs and lows, and as single parents, it's so important to make sure we look after ourselves in the process. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to BetterHelp, the online therapy service that's here to support you every step of the way. With BetterHelp, you can connect with registered therapists from the comfort of your own home. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or just need someone to talk to, they're here to help. Plus, as a Frollo member, you get an exclusive 25% off your first month. Just visit betterhelp.com/Frollo. That's betterhelp.com/Frollo. annalie.com/Frollo.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Unapologetic is the name of the book, and it's Unshackle Your Shame, Reclaim Your Power. And it's a collection of stories, including my own. So it's part memoir. It's about when my marriage was breaking down, which is, another truth, a bit like the burnout, another truth I didn't want to face. It would have been better that it was anything else. The journey that I went on trying to find anything that would save my marriage, female sexuality courses, any, relationship work, therapy. At the time of my marriage breakdown as well, I ought to trigger warning this. I'm going to speak about self-harm, but I was in the thick of OCD, which presented as a form of self-harming, where I was habitually skin picking and like hacking at my face until it bled twice a day. Which I now understand to be obviously a response to stress. But if we talk about shame, I'm a therapist. I was a therapist then working with clients who was self-harming, and that's deeply shameful, obviously. So in the book as well, I've used my therapist. I've waived my own anonymity in this book, and my therapist has put her files in about her first impressions of me when I went for help, because I really want to expose shame. And if you put shame into the light, it absolutely cannot survive. It's like a gremlin when they saw the bright light, they cannot survive. And I've put so many, like I say, of my own stories in there. I've got my divorce lawyer in there. My divorce lawyer is in my book talking about not so much myself. We do talk about it. He talks about the journey of me stepping into an identity that I didn't have at the beginning, the places that I was maybe more vulnerable, ashamed and afraid, and then where we ended up in that process. He talks about how shame is weaponized actively in the divorce process, and how more people, divorce or just long relationship aside, stay with partners because we're afraid of the intimacy and secrets that we've shared and cultivated between two people in a trusting relationship, that's going to be used and weaponized against you, particularly if it becomes part of the legal process. We just have so many places that we're given shame, and shame is not yours to carry, but we take it on. And again, I'm going to trigger warning this again. It's write very openly about sexual assault as well. There's a client of mine that's gone in, and I was the first person she told after 40 years, and she was assaulted by a teacher at school. And then the assault itself was so horrendous. But I'm not going to say the worst part, but some of the latter reverberations of that were that her mother and sister knew and were aware. The police officer, this is sort of 50 plus years ago, the police officer was her friend's dad from school, who said that paedophiles always preyed on those that were weak. And she grew up with this image of herself as being weak. And then her mother would shame and humiliate her after the assault, even though it was never discussed. So you have this horrible violence against you, but then you're left with this feeling of deep shame that, this happened to me because I'm a weak person. And then her mother is continuing to perpetuate feelings of shame. She's actually gay as well. And people would then say, oh, do you think that's why you're gay? Which is then completely devaluing her choice and her own identity as to who she is. She said actually it's incredibly common, and she looked at a lot of messaging boards about this. People that were victims of sexual assault didn't then come out because they felt that their families had been through enough because of the shame of the assault. And so people were therefore taking on and internalizing even more shame, which is just beyond heartbreaking. I've gone into infertility. I've gone into body image. I've got a bariatric surgeon in there about where people are given shame about their bodies. It's the most heartbreaking story about this lady that didn't get to him until she was 70. And she did it, and she did all the work. And he writes this beautiful story about her bursting into tears in his office when she became the woman she was always meant to. But she talks about when she was told she was too disgusting and by her parents, and how she was treated. And there's just so many incredible stories in this book of shame that we all carry. And I just want women and girl dads, really want girl dads to read it. I want men that are allies of women. And I know there are lots of men that are female allies. I want people that want to know how best to support us when we say, I don't know what I want. And we're so afraid of entering into some kind of conflict situation or not being a good girl, or, you know, we're not just being difficult, or, you know, these sorts of things. It's so hard for us to express our needs because we've never felt that it's been our liberty to have them. And I just want everyone to have hold of this book. Like I've written it. It is my memoir. It is my story, because I've just laid any shame that I had bare in those pages. But I want people to buy it because the stories of my clients that are in those pages are so courageous and so generous of them to turn their pain into purpose. And we had to relive it, by the way. All of us, if you do writing, you have to edit and go over it and go over it and go over it and go over it and get lawyers involved. I mean, it's been so visceral in the reliving of this for all of us. And I'm just so emotional and so grateful that people were prepared to relive their pain in order to save someone else's from some of theirs.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's really kind of powerful, really, really powerful. And there's no human being on the planet that, you know, hasn't experienced shame on some level. And it's such a destructive, way to feel. And, you know, even when I look back, just some of what you were talking about there, when I look back at being a teenage girl, I think there were so many aspects of shame that came through, you know, in lots of ways, but just some of what we're, you know, as you were saying, we're supposed to be the good girl, or how we're supposed to be, or different depending on where you grew up. You know, I grew up in Ireland, you know, the Catholic Church, and lots of different things, but it is so destructive. Even becoming a single parent, suddenly, why do I feel shame? Why? Because society has told us that this is bad, this is failure, this is. So I think it's really, really powerful to turn it on its head, and, you know, yeah, release it. And so, and as you say, very courageous of the people who have agreed to have their stories shared in the book, and you to have you to bear yours. So I'm really, really looking forward to reading it. And what would you say what is the antidote to shame? How does one tackle that?
Oh, I love that you asked me that question. Thank you. And good news, everybody. Great news. There is indeed a cure for shame. There is, and I'm not gatekeeping it. And that, of course, is in the book as well. But the cure for shame is self-compassion. And that's like, oh, cool, great. I'll go and do some self-compassion. I'll go and run a bath. And you're like, no, that is not self-compassion. So the issue with shame is it's such a deep-rooted belief system. We almost don't know we're being driven by it. Shame is an I am. It's a felt sense. So guilt is something you did, or you feel you did. Shame is something you believe yourself to be. You know, I often give the example of if I said to you, oh, Zoe, do you know what? Bit of a rush. It's well booked day. I'm traveling. I've got this on. I'm doing the book. I don't think I've done her outfit that well. I feel like a bit of a crappy mummy. That's me being a bit guilty. If I gave you that exact setup again and I said to you, Zoe, I am a bad mother. Like, I honestly feel physically nauseous giving you that example. And I know I'm not a bad mother, but that's shame. When I have people in my office, victims of sexual assault, I am weak. People that have had horrible issues with infertility, I am broken. I am a reject. People that I'm a failure. That comes up a lot. People with disordered eating patterns, I am disgusting. because they feel horrible having their relationship with their body or their food. People that have been in assault environments, I am terrified, I am out of control, I am unsafe. People that have been betrayed, betrayal trauma is a huge thing. I am not enough. You know, there is so many things that I hear all the time, and the I am is the limiting belief, as I say, that sits so, if you imagine a weed, you know, the ones that you keep cutting off and you think you've got it, but actually it's still there and it pops up every year, that is shame. That is shame. And we have to go deep to get it out. But the good thing is, once it's out, and I see this every time I work with clients, once it's out, it doesn't go back in. And then the beautiful thing is you've removed it all and you've got this space for self-compassion. So when we get that out, you then get people going, I was only a child. There was nothing I could have done differently. It wasn't my fault. You know, you get people suddenly realizing that this thing they've been carrying around all this time is just so untrue and it's not theirs to carry. Self-compassion, an exercise for people that would like to, this is resonating and they'd like to try and generate self-compassion. It's very, very hard. Like, you could tell me a story, or I can talk to you about me self-harming, and you can be like, God, darling, that's so awful. You seem so nice. Like, I feel really, really bad for you. Like, I want to send you loads of love, right? It's really easy for you to empathize with me and send me self-compassion, someone you love, one of your friends, your kids. And then to turn that lens on ourselves, when you still have some shame, you can allow a bit of it in, but then it stops short. You're kind of like, oh yeah, but you know, maybe you did make them do that though, or maybe you were a bit back chatty, or well, didn't happen to anybody else, did it? So there must be something wrong with you. That's shame.
Wow, that is really, really powerful, and I can really feel the difference in the I feel and I am statement. They just feel very different. Like, oh, I feel, you know, I feel like a bad mother because I, you know, was late to collect them from school today because I got stuck in traffic or whatever. I am. There's such a difference in how that feels. So, and how that is going to feel to the person who's experiencing. It's like, you know, erosion, isn't it? To keep saying these, you know, to keep saying these I am statements which relate to shame. So how do you work with your clients then who come to you for trauma and shame therapy?
Eye-Opening Moments podcast are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm an EMDR practitioner, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is an amazing technique if what I'm talking about is resonating. I mean, I do believe everyone should pre-order my book, and I'm happy to be thirsty and beggy about this, but please pre-order it. I didn't realize how important pre-ordering was before I went into publishing, but please pre-order that book. It changes mine and my daughter's life, not financially, by the way, but just to give it a chance to get out there. But there's a beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks about the two most effective treatments for trauma being yoga and EMDR, and both of those move the issues from your tissues. And that's really what we're talking about here, because that's shame being the felt sense. It is stored within your system. So I do the bilateral eye stimulation, which is effectively a beautiful technique to reprocess trauma and remove the shame, the limiting belief that's that big, deep weed that's attached within it. But going back to the self-compassion piece, the exercise that people can do if they're unable to find a practitioner, or if, you know, I appreciate the privilege, which is another reason I wrote the book, is that not everyone can afford a session with me or with other therapists, or maybe have access to that. So the book is a really great way of being able to understand and work through shame yourself and look at your limiting beliefs. But another thing to do is, if this is resonating and you can remember an event or a time or a thing that really stands out for you. Like, I work with a lot of men, and it's a very common thing for me to work on is perhaps someone that was later diagnosed with something like dyslexia or neurodivergence, and that were made to read at the front of the class and were shamed by teachers. I mean, it happened. I've had a lot of that. So this has happened very often. And therefore that manifests in not wanting to use their voice or being afraid of public speaking, which then affects your job, prospects and possibilities and all of these sorts of things. And we don't feel safe to kind of be ourselves and use our voice. So what I want people to do is to imagine a time, perhaps an event or an incident, and put either your inner child, if you can connect to that, you've done that work. I have a picture of my own daughter when she was 7 in my office all the time for people to look at her and be like, if you rerun that situation and put that child in the frame, tell me how it looks now. A niece, a nephew, a friend's child that's around the same age that you were, that you care about. One of your friends, put them in a situation, maybe like a sexual assault, and you tell me if you think that's a grey area, or I had a drink first with them, or I gave them a little kiss. Like, you tell me and rerun that. Because people come in with their shame, they believe that they somehow asked for it, or like I say, there was a grey area, or in some way, shape or form they're to blame. And quite often, particularly with women, when we're experiencing trauma, we activate the fawn trauma response. Now, most people have heard of fight, flight, and freeze, but there's 2 more. There's flop, which is pass out on the spot. I always sort of talk about, there's little impala deers that bounce around and they see a predator and they go, ah, and like pass out because the fear is overwhelming. The last trauma response is fawn. And fawning is the thing that we do when the others just aren't applicable. And fawn is the one that I probably see the most in incidents of sexual assault, when there's so much shame left behind, which is, as I say, well, why did I reply to a message that they sent me the next day? Why did I give them a kiss when they went in to give me a kiss afterwards? What, I had a couple of drinks first. I did know them because I'd met them through a friend of a friend. And in some way, this fawn trauma response, which is making us believe that we were up for it or going along with it, or we think in some way we perpetuated this, it is absolutely a triggered trauma response which activates much, much, much faster than cognitive rational thought. It is designed to keep you safe. And one could argue that if you are physically still here in a really weird way, this is not me diminishing, I do this every day and this is the most important work I do, but your body and your system has kept you alive in the only way it knew how. It was trying to keep you alive. But we come away, shame is the stain that's left on you after trauma, because we don't understand why we would act in a certain way. And then that informs us that we are in some way, shame statement, I am broken, I am disgusting, I am weak. And then we view the world through that lens.
To anyone who might be listening to this, who is not yet a single parent, but in a relationship that is really unhealthy and not making them happy, but is terrified of what's on the other side of being a single parent, or feels that it would be, complete failure to, end the relationship, become a single parent and put their kids through that. Is there anything that you would want to say to those people?
Some advice I could give for that? Yeah, there's a couple of things in there that I'd like to offer. So the fawn trauma response is really important, because a lot of people are like, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? Which is, guess what? Incredibly shameful. Like, there's yet something else I haven't done well or right, or, and again, you don't understand why maybe you're having this response. There's a lot of research. I would encourage anyone to read it as well. Emily Nagoski's incredible book called Come As You Are, which talks a lot about, she's a professor and works around female sexuality. And she, there is a very wide body of research now that about sort of sexual response, even in very dangerous environments, which in a sense, we feel like our body is betraying ourselves. For example, it is possible to orgasm during sexual assault. So you would think, how confusing and how shameful if I, in theory, have got off on something that is so terrifying, and what on earth does that say about me? I don't know if you watched Baby Reindeer when that was out last year, but it was a very popular documentary. It was a gentleman that was sexually assaulted by a boss, so there was even more fawning in that he felt he had to go along with the inappropriateness of this boss because he wanted to work in the film industry, and this guy was very powerful, and even though he knew, so I think he was taking drugs at his house, and it was a bit weird. And then at one point he woke up and realized he'd been raped. And then on the back of the rape and the sexual assault, he found himself looking at what he believed to be very kind of dark pornography and very extreme. He said that nothing would satisfy him apart from the extreme, that the real occult. And that's because you don't know what to do with what's happened to you. You don't understand what's happened. Like, a lot of your faculties go offline during something traumatic and terrifying. And I just really want, you know, if you've got a friend that you're concerned about, please don't give them the whole, why don't you just leave? Or why didn't you leave? Or, you know, add more shame onto the situation, because there's quite possibly some, I would imagine, an awful lot of shame already. And what that person probably needs is a hand holding out to them and guiding them back into some sense of themselves. And if they can't cultivate the self-compassion, is helping them towards that, because shame will be so gripped around that individual. Victims of narcissism, you know, when you're isolated from people and you know that you've not maintained relationships as you should have done perhaps, and you know, then you find yourself in this situation where you're being mistreated, and then how do you reach out for help and ask? And you feel so incredibly ashamed. You probably got a perpetuator of that behavior telling you that you're shameful and broken and wrong, and gaslighting you as well. But with regard to the single parenthood, I actually wrote one of my newsletters last week about this, about how it's the term, oh, your marriage failed. Apparently your marriage failed. It's that word, failure, your marriage failed. And you're like, well, I never felt like that. That's not how I felt. I've never felt that my marriage failed. I mean, I have my daughter. I don't think that's too twee or glib to say, but I did so much work trying to find anything that I could bring back that would save my marriage. And what I found was me. I found the bits of me that I thought I had to put away in a box forever and I'd never see again. And then I found a version of me that I hadn't yet even stepped into, like a beautiful dress or something. And it just, everything became possible to me. That's not me diminishing my ex-husband or our marriage. We co-parent perfectly well. And, you know, we're transitioning into different roles. And as you know, you're forever in that person's life. So like, it's not, you just transition to different roles in a different way. But in no way do I feel like a failure. In no way do I feel that, the societal kind of shame heaping of, that I've somehow branded as a divorcee, and that diminishes my value. Quite the opposite. I now have absolute autonomy over every piece of my life and my purpose and my direction. And since removing the shame and working through that and having a shame-less life, which is what I have now, it feels limitless. And I would love for everybody listening to this that is feeling on that precipice, that's maybe like, oh, what will happen? Honestly, you don't know, is what I'd say. So I just want to sort of really, I guess, send a message from the other side, because when I was going through the very last moment before I said the big words out loud, which is, I want us to get a divorce, I don't think this is sustainable, I've never been more anxious in my life than the moments leading up to that, ever. I would be going through every conceivable scenario, possibility, scouring internet forums, looking for anyone that had a kid the same age as me and ended up being okay, and like, tell me the happy ever after story and make me a promise that I'm going to be all right, and how is it going to look, and where will I live, and what will it be? And the answer is, you just don't know. And all I can say is I have never, ever felt that anxious or disconnected or honestly unhappy again. There were challenges, of course there were. Like, let's be real, it didn't just be like, la, la. Of course there's been financial hardships and other things, but those challenges were very different to the feeling of total disconnection from myself and unbelievable anxiety. So from that learning, and it's something I take back into my day-to-day as well, is anxiety can be so constricting and exhausting and oppressive. And actually, sometimes we just need to take an action.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And sometimes what's on the other side of that action isn't as scary as we think it's going to be. Thank you so much for coming on the Frollo podcast. I've absolutely loved chatting to you and hearing more about you and your story. And I will absolutely pre-order your book. And I would urge anyone listening who resonates with this conversation to support Annalie and not only support Annalie, but, you know, read a brilliant book as well. So, and I wish you all the best of luck with it, Annalie. I'm sure it's going to go really, really well.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com or follow us on Instagram at Frollo app. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.